9 months, 11 days till Election Day. Are you going to win?
Yes.
How much do you want it?
Badly, because I think the country needs it. Whoever wins the Republican primary is going to be a standard bearer for a vision of the country that I don't think reflects who we are. The proposal.
That was President Obama in an interview tonight with Diane Sawyer of ABC World News. Back with us now, John Heilemann of New York Magazine, Tom Brokaw, an NBC News special correspondent, and Chris Hayes, host of MSNBC's Up with Chris Hayes. Tom, I was struck by the absence of President Obama in tonight's debate. Here it is, the week of a State of the Union address. There's plenty of Obama agenda to talk about and attack in a Republican presidential debate, and he wasn't much of a figure in this one tonight.
Yeah, but the big issue tonight was for Mitt Romney to try to kneecap Speaker Gingrich. I mean, I think that was a larger theme for him, and so Obama was set aside. A couple of references to the speech, kind of dismissive, obviously about health care. They didn't like that. There was a fair amount of discussion, as you remember, toward the end about Obama not being a great friend of Israel. That plays very well in Florida. It's a big issue. But no, it didn't come up very much. And I've talked to some people in the Obama White House in the last 24 hours or so, and they're saying, let it be Gingrich. Let it be Gingrich.
Yes. Yeah, obviously.
Right.
Chris Hayes, on Gingrich, if he is to survive, he was going to have to do something tonight that I don't think any of us saw. So if we are talking about Romney going forward, what the Obama campaign was watching tonight is a potential nominee having to talk about Swiss bank accounts, having to talk about how much money are you making from Florida foreclosures, as asked by Newt Gingrich.
Having to talk about his trustee and his blind trust, which even if it turns out to vet out and be a proper defense of the actual transactions, a trustee and a blind trust are not exactly things that most Americans are using to handle their money. I think Mitt Romney, the two biggest weaknesses Mitt Romney has, if he were to proceed to become the nominee, that have come out of this, choosing to embrace the mantle of candidate of the 1%, of Mr. 1%, of this kind of John Galtian job creator figure who is using his business success almost as a cultural signifier to the Republican base because he can't use other aspects of his personality or background to really win over the right wing of his party. That's going to be a liability. He's really embraced that, and it's going to be impossible to run away from it. And I think his stances on immigration. He has delighted in getting to the right of his opponents in the Republican primary on immigration. And one of the most fascinating moments tonight, the immigration discussion that started off the evening, the tone was so different than it had been in previous debates. It's a lot easier to feed anti-immigration red meat to a Republican crowd in front of a very white audience in Iowa or in New Hampshire than it is standing in front of a much more mixed audience in Florida. And you saw that in the tone. All of a sudden, they were much more defensive. They wanted to go out of their way to talk about how they weren't against immigrants. And I think that shows that they have some real vulnerability on that in the general.
I want to take a look at one of the rougher patches of the immigration section of that discussion tonight, where Mitt Romney wasn't really sure what is in one of his ads about Newt Gingrich. Let's listen to that.
Saying that Speaker Gingrich called Spanish, quote, the language of the ghetto. What do you mean by that?
I haven't seen the ad, so I'm sorry I don't get to see all the TV ads. I don't know what did he say that?
As much as Governor Romney doesn't particularly like my use of language, I found his use of language and his deliberate distortion equally offensive.
Okay, and just because we don't get to see this very often in debates, CNN did a check about this ad. It really is a Romney ad. I was doing a check, too, while that happened. And now let's run Wolf Blitzer demonstrating to Mitt Romney that this really is his ad.
I'm here at a time.
All right, it looks like we don't have that in our control room. In any event, Wolf Blitzer actually did the check and showed him this is your ad.
And you say...
And Mitt Romney said, I approve this message.
Right.
And I approve this
message. At the end of the ad, it says, I'm Mitt Romney and I approve this message.
Yeah. And that's one of the great high-speed possibilities of the Internet, that we can do that pretty quickly. But that was the kind of thing that this audience was not very comfortable with.
No, I mean, and there was palpable discomfort throughout the entire conversation, I think, around immigration, precisely because all the candidates were attempting to thread this needle, and also because they've been all doing this. They've been doing it throughout the campaign, but it's been particularly true in Florida as the stakes have risen, which is that their super PACs and campaigns are running ads in a variety of different mediums, whether it's mailers, whether it's Spanish language radio ads. that are incredibly negative and cutting, and then they have to own them standing next to the person on stage, and that's always difficult. And tonight, I thought that no one seemed to really want to embrace the most negative attacks that they've been wielding against each other in their advertising.
John Heilemann, there was an annex audience that it looked like they were in another building as a Spanish Hispanic group that were sending in some questions from there. That's a kind of unique arrangement for Florida to be having a debate with those two audiences.
Yes, it is, and it's a unique state for sure, Lawrence. But I think, this issue is, to cut to the core of it, Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich is right about Mitt Romney. He has become the most right-wing, anti-immigration, most restrictionist Republican candidate among the presidential candidates. He's done that for a reason, tactically and strategically in this primary. It helped him to get rid of Rick Perry. Rick Perry's debate performances were bad, but the truth is that a lot of the damage was done by Mitt Romney against Rick Perry on the issue of immigration, and it's helped him to help thwart Newt Gingrich in various ways in Iowa and elsewhere. But now Romney finds himself in a situation where I think a recent poll has him with about 27 or 28% of support among Hispanics nationally, and that is a number that makes it impossible for Mitt Romney to win a general election. It is particularly problematic in the context of Barack Obama, who actually is underperforming with Hispanics right now. So there's a real opening for a Republican candidate in a general election who can appeal to a large number of Hispanic voters. But Mitt Romney, in order to get this nomination, has put himself in a place where he can't get the number that he could get and the number that he needs to get. And so we're starting to see the process here tonight and from this day forward of Mitt Romney trying to get back into a more acceptable place with Hispanic voters that will allow him to be competitive in the fall.
All right, let's look at the two front runners' answer to the final question, which was about electability.
Do you want freedom and independence and a paycheck and a job, or do you want dependence and big government and food stamps and a lack of future? And I believe if we have a big election with truly historic big choices, that we can defeat Barack Obama by a huge margin, but it won't be by running just as a Republican. It will be an American campaign open to every American who prefers a paycheck to food stamps, who prefers the Declaration of Independence to Saul Alinsky, and who prefers a strong national security to trying to appease our enemies.
I believe if you just elect the same people that change chairs in Washington, not much will happen. I think if you want to change Washington, you're going to have to bring someone in who's been on the outside. I have lived in the private sector. I know how it works. I've competed with businesses around the world. I know how to win. I know what it takes to keep America strong. I know how to work in government. I've had experience for 4 years, working as the governor of Massachusetts. I will use the experience of my life to get America right, and I will be able to convince the American people that someone with my experience is very different than Barack Obama, and that experience is how I'll beat him.
Tom, that just might be the perfect example about the difference between the two. Here you have a carefully planned and rehearsed Romney presentation on why I'm electable, and Newt Gingrich on why he's electable goes off into things that include some guy named Saul Alinsky, who I'm not sure many people out there have any idea who he's talking about. And what was that you said about electability, Newt? It's just...
Well, what happens, and I was also thinking about the guy, the outside versus the inside. Newt Gingrich goes out and portrays himself as somebody who is an outsider, but then he always returns to the inside. He lives within the confines of the Beltway in Washington. That's where his business is done. On the other hand, tonight, for the first time, Mitt Romney not only seemed to have his act together, but he seemed more appealing to a lot of people, even those people in that audience there tonight. I think that there's a poll out today that you've probably seen, the new NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Mitt Romney runs much closer to Obama than Newt Gingrich does. Newt Gingrich gets beat almost by a 2-to-1 margin in a projected election. So that's beginning to erode the Newt Gingrich bump and the surge from last week. But if we have learned anything, if there's one short and enduring lesson and history from these debates and from these primaries that we've seen so far, check with us next week, because it could change again.
Exactly.
Nobody has fallen in love here so far. Some people have danced a little better one week than they have the week before, but the prom will go on.
These are the nights when I hate the commercial breaks. We have to wrap it there. John Heilemann of New York Magazine, Tom Brokaw, an NBC News special correspondent, and Chris Hayes, host of MSNBC's Up with Chris Hayes. Thank you all very much for joining me tonight.